Hello and welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches making the big time where they're at. This week, our host, Coach Preston Peterson, brings to you a high school strength coach who is doing it big time in the high school setting. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this week's show.
Before we get to the show, I'd like to thank our sponsors. The first one is TeamBuildr. Thank you, TeamBuildr, for sponsoring today's episode. TeamBuildr is the leading software for high schools and colleges by providing coaches the ability to write programs online, generate over 13 reports, and even train athletes remotely for side income. Right now, if you sign up with the code BIGTIME, you'll receive a free APRE programming template, which works automatically within TeamBuildr. No more spreadsheets and workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day. You can automate your programming without outsourcing your programming with TeamBuildr. It is an awesome software. The guys at TeamBuildr have it going on. Hewitt is an awesome resource for everybody that is a high school strength and conditioning coach. There's not enough great things I can say about TeamBuildr and everything that they're doing for coaches around the nation. Our second sponsor for today's show is PowerLift. PowerLift is the leading manufacturer and distributor of heavy-duty strength training equipment for collegiate and high school athletic performance centers around the world. PowerLift brings over 20 years of experience to the strength and conditioning world, and all the products are manufactured in the state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Jefferson, Iowa. They are proud to support all coaches making it big time where they're at, and I cannot say enough great things about these two sponsors. PowerLift in general, from my college days to where I'm at now, PowerLift has been our rack. I'm telling you guys, there is not a more durable rack out there. If you go to Northwest Missouri State, you check out the racks there. They've had them probably for close to 15, 20 years now, and they still look like they're brand new. The racks that we have within our weight room, nice, pristine. It does not show wear and tear at all. And the thing about it is when you buy PowerLift, you are getting heavy duty. This stuff is rugged and it will last. And when you're looking for training equipment that's going to be used by multiple teams, multiple student athletes every single day, it's important to have the best. So thank you to our sponsors, TeamBuildr and PowerLift. Now let's get to our show. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Big Time Strength Podcast. This week, I'm excited to have Coach Rachel Hayes on, and I've actually had one of Rachel's co-workers on this show, and I started following Rachel probably around the same time. And one of the things that just sticks out to me is just her passion to help every single one of her teams. And Rachel's at Denton High School in Texas, and one of the things that I see over and over that she's putting out there is just working with every athlete that comes through her door, giving the best that she's got. But so many times she's putting out there just valuable information for why she does what she does in the weight room, and how it carries over to the field, court, mat, whatever she's doing, working with, is just something that really stands out to me. So at Denton Geyer, she works with all of women's sports, men's basketball, cross country, and tennis. And then also helps out with some of the middle school programming and then implementing some health and wellness initiatives with the staff, which is all just a ton of stuff just to coordinate and work through. But the passion that you see her come with, on at least on Twitter, and getting to talk to her a little bit beforehand, I can tell that she's into what she does, and definitely a perfectionist as far as making sure everything's aligned the way that she wants it to. So I'm excited for this. Coach has some stints at Stanford University, University of Alabama, Oklahoma State University, and then landed at a high school, and she is killing it there. Coach, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on. Can you give us a little bit of your background, where you're at now, and kind of how you got to where you're at?
Yeah, thank you for that. Like you said, I spent some time in the college sector during grad school at Oklahoma State, and then did another internship at Alabama. Like a lot of us do, we take jobs, personal training, and kind of between learning in the strength world. So I did that a bit, and then got the opportunity to work at Stanford for a year, and so that was great. When I was there, I decided that I would like to kind of see if I couldn't get in at the high school level. If you're in the college realm, you're seeing more and more kids coming in, just broken down, and they get to college and they need to be kind of fixed in a way. They're kind of been specializing for so long, and I was just thinking, wow, I would love to get in the high school sector and see if I, can help some of these kids. And so I went to the University of Texas for a year and got a post-bac teaching certification. And I was really, really fortunate that the Denton ISD school district was hiring right after I finished that program. They opened up a full-time strength job at each of the 4 high schools, and I was very fortunate and blessed to land the one here at Denton Guyer. So I'm my 5th year here, and it's been great. I really, really enjoy it. So yeah.
Coach, that's awesome to have the experience of seeing where athletes have kind of been, and then knowing that you want to help them get to that next level and hopefully get there a little bit more healthy than maybe some of the athletes that you'd seen to that point. What's some of the things that you've had to overcome along the way? Some of the tough hurdles that have jumped out at you, and what you did to make sure that you left them in the dust?
You're talking like hurdles as far as just like, in the profession, like specific to the job or the grind, as we say?
Yeah. So anything that you've just noticed, possibly from college, moving to high school, or at your job the last 5 years, stuff that just sticks out to you as a challenge that you've had to overcome, and just tell the listeners how you've just attacked it and came out on the other side.
Well, I would say I'm really here at Guyer. I'll kind of just use talk about just being here. We're really blessed to have a work culture here, and like you mentioned, you've talked to Coach Keese. So the attitude towards strength and conditioning has been really strong here for a long time. So I'm really blessed that everybody is on board. All of my coaches are very supportive, and we have a culture of strength, and we value the importance of it. But I would say probably one of the toughest hurdles that I have to deal with pretty continuously is just trying to manage training stress and load with all my kids who play year-round, mainly my volleyball and soccer kids. Part of our job as a strength coach is to help to develop them, to make them better athletes. We're trying to reduce injuries, but at the same time, all that can't come at the expense of their health. So that's just something that is, I'm constantly, trying to figure out what's the best way to approach that, where I can, when I can load them and for how long, and, when I have to back off. And for my volleyball team, for instance, it's, some weekends I have 7 or 8 and they're playing and everyone's left, they're not playing. And so then I have to, modify the lift for those 7, or I have to, try to push the ones that aren't playing over the weekend. So it's just a constant juggle with that. But in the process, I've learned a lot, and it's definitely opened my mind and changed my attitude about training. And it doesn't have to fit in a box, and it doesn't have to follow a program verbatim. There's the nice thing about working with high school kids and just where they are in their training age is that you can be pretty fluid in it. So it's a hurdle, but it's also one that I've learned from.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the coolest things about our job is also being able to have the the variables that are in front of us are just so fun to manipulate, and like yes, no doubt it's a challenge, but man, like that's part of the reason why it makes it so dang fun. And
Sure.
to hear you like have the mindset to attack that and to see it, like some coaches just like, okay, volleyball session, let's get after it. We're going to treat everybody the same, and obviously not everybody's in the same spot. One of the conversations that I had with our basketball coach prior to the season was like, they've got a long bench. Like, there's so many guys that are on the team that won't ever see the court. He's like, well, we're not doing them justice if they do the same workout as the guys that are playing a ton. And it's like, yeah, that makes total sense. What can we do to make sure everybody's getting what they need? And so one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about is like your block or level system, and like separating training ages and experience and kind of managing that workload. What are some of the systems that you've used, and what's that look like to take somebody that's, maybe in season almost all the time because, they're in their high school season, they go straight to club or whatever it is. What do you got going on there?
Well, that kind of really just depends on, it kind of depends on their age and where they are. Sometimes I have the added challenge of, I'll have freshmen who are very talented and they get moved into a varsity lift, but, they're not quite ready for a varsity lift. They may be playing at a very high level, but that doesn't mean that they're, prepared to handle, heavy squats or, whatever it may be. And that kind of aside, I start with my middle schoolers and freshman athletes with body weight and dumbbells, and I kind of just that realm of my programming is really just me, trying to decide how can I get them as strong as I can while they're still developing. So we use a lot of isometrics, dumbbells and plates and things like that for up to 6 months, some of them, and I can progress them then right into the weight room, right to the barbell, and they developed enough requisite strength that they can go right into using the barbell, and they pick up their squat pattern, their hinge pattern really quickly. For my kids my young kids, my freshmen that get bumped into a varsity lift, basically I'm just having to take that varsity lift, and literally on the board, I'll just write arrows out to the side. If B1 is our squat, I'm writing a regression out to the side, like, you're going to stick with a bodyweight squat or a goblet squat or a split squat, whatever it might be. And so that's kind of how we function as far as, dealing with different training ages or different scenarios and different groups. Yeah.
That's great. So if you're separating these people out, or, other than just training age or maybe varsity level experience, that type of stuff, what are the things that you're looking for? What's the criteria that you used to determine athlete progression to the next level or to move to the next thing within your exercise progressions?
Yeah, I'd say that kind of just depends on what the movement is. Once my ninth graders are, soundly squatting a 50-pound dumbbell, I can see that they visually can control the descent and the, coming up out of it, stability and everything like that. And that's just an example with the squat. Then I kind of start to know that, we're getting to where we can probably handle the barbell and moving that safely. And I would say, and this is kind of this is an answer, but kind of around the answer way. I use I rely on my progression a lot. We use with the young ones from 8th until their 9th grade year. I mean, they go through a tremendous amount of progressions. I try to take every movement and we tweak it just a little bit every 2 or 3 weeks. And so it's, I've tried to develop every angle of it as much as possible. And so they're pretty solid. So I don't know if that counts, or not as a criteria, but it's kind of worked for me the past several years, just really pushing those progressions and moving them as many ways as I can, trying to increase their movement vocabulary. And it seems to pan out. I kind of work out, the imbalances and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like your terminology with the movement vocabulary, just being able to expose our athletes to that in some sort of progression, I think is such a big deal. And, one of the things that you're talking about is maybe the criteria to move to the next thing isn't completely clear cut, but as a coach, we can see when something's not going the way that we need to, and maybe we need to regress or whatever it is. And
sure,
when I first started, there were so many times where I'm like, okay, I want to be able to do this amount of weight this many times, and then that means we could progress on to the next thing. And then I realized that's dumb. That doesn't work for every athlete the way that we want it to work, and we don't always get to see everybody progress the way that they should, even though that they can master a movement. It just might not be in the same way that everybody else is. So that's
right.
I think that's the fun part of it. Tell
Definitely.
me. Yeah, go into a little bit more of that if you're seeing some of that, and maybe break down kind of the methodologies that you're using. You said every 2 to 3 weeks you're changing some of those progressions. What's that look like for you with your main lifts? How does that flow throughout the week?
Well, and that just kind of depends on and I'll say I change progressions, and that would just be with my young ones, my kids, my ninth graders. So we might use, like, say for, now I'll get really, really basic. So one thing I've started trying to teach my kids is I'm finding that they don't really know they're not really aware of how their shoulder moves, like protraction, retraction, and different planes. And so when they're in eighth grade, we'll start with that. We'll start with really basic stuff like that. We'll work into, that into our upper body press. So for instance, when they're freshmen, they get here, we'll start with like a half kneeling overhead press, like a single arm. Then we might go to a Z press with some plates. Same with push-ups. We start pretty basic and pretty rigid with our push-ups. They learn to posterior pelvic tilt on their stomach. And then we start trying to push up from the bottom with that posterior pelvic tilt, and then we'll start an eccentric phase from the top with a tilt. So it's just building and building and building. And so as I begin to see them mastering each one of those, to where they're, they finally get to where they're doing, one or two push-ups really well, then I'm like, okay, well, now we might start adding some external load. I might throw some plate presses in there, and work the opposite. So those are just kind of my own, I don't really use any well-known methodologies or anything like that. It's just more of a mix of my my own intuition based on what I've seen and what they need. If that makes sense.
No, definitely
go
does.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, I was just going to say that definitely does. And I like the way that you're progressing that. And from a young age, 8th and 9th graders, being able to show them how their body moves. And no doubt, like within athletics, we want them to move fluidly and they're ingrained with their sport skill, but being able to teach them to utilize their body in the weight room is totally different. And to make sure that we can, hopefully, like our outcome would be prevention of some injuries or a reduction of injury anyway.
Sure.
So like that's a cool thing to be able to mess with all the progressions, or how many times you're seeing the 8th or 9th graders within a week and being able to just expose them to that. So by the time they're 10th, 11th, 12th grade, they're rolling. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe your older groups and what you're doing maybe for, let's just maybe just talk about varsity level athletes and what you're looking at for in season, kind of the main focuses, and then moving possibly right into out of season after that.
So with my older kids, and I should say this, Mike Boyle's influence has had a tremendous impact on me. His work and his thoughts can be seen, year round in any parts of my program. It runs a continuous thread. Once they get into the weight room, we start talking about the barbell. My older kids, my varsity kids, when we're talking about just developing pure raw strength, I'm a huge fan of Jim Wendler's 5-3-1. I've had a lot of success with that. I wouldn't say I have with my kids who play year round, my soccer and volleyball kids. It's not necessarily something I can implement because they don't typically have that. They don't have those blocks of time where they have the bandwidth to tolerate that kind of training. But I use it with my men's basketball team throughout the summer and preseason, and I've had a really, really good outcome with that. And when we come to in season, I'm really just trying to keep us as strong as we can. We lift 2 days a week pretty much year round. And then especially in the in-season, we're still lifting 2 days a week. And I treat the mid-week lift as just kind of as little stress on them as I can. It's heavily concentric, cleans, pulls, maybe some upper body in there, just depending on what the sport is. So stuff like that. Really just trying to dose them and keep them as fresh as I can. Saturday is when we'll come in and we'll do primarily strength stuff, our squats, our benches, chin-ups. We might do some, Nordic stuff for our hamstrings, things like that, where they get a little bit more time to recover from Saturday, Sunday, Monday before they play again on Tuesday.
I like that. And one of the things that you talked about, it was just being able to train year round, at least 2 times a week, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's something that is something that people struggle with. Maybe in season they can get all their athletes there because obviously they're in season, but outside sometimes it's a struggle getting athletes in or whatever the situation might be at that high school. Can you kind of tell us what is it that you've done to build that culture so that people want to be there in there year round, or maybe how do you schedule things so that they are in there year round?
Well, kind of like I mentioned before, the culture guide was set long before I got here. The Coach Keith and I don't know if you know Brian Keggins, who's at Oklahoma now, did a really good job of instilling that. And we have a thing here we hashtag on tweets called Southside Work. Sometimes we use Southside Strong, and that's just kind of how we are here. Winning and competitiveness is part of the culture. I think that when I came in, I think the fact that I'm very simplistic, I'm very basic, I am a perfectionist. I think the fact that we started that way from the get-go, and we were able, I was able to say, hey, let's do it this way. Let's start with body weight. Let's start with goblet squats, and then we'll progress to our barbell. And let's progress the right way. I think that kind of made waves. And I would always, I'm never the person who's going to risk, volunteering an answer when I don't know that I'm right. And when it comes to training, I'm definitely, we're going to err on the slow, very progressive side, and we're going to get to that squat. But when we get to that squat, it'll be, the right time, it's going to be as perfect as we can. And, perfection is not necessarily, I know we have conflicting opinions about striving for perfection in the field, but in my opinion, it gives us something to strive for. So that standard is always there. And anyway, yeah, I think that's been a part of it.
Yeah, the work mentality and being able to progress slowly and to search for it anyway or move towards perfect movement is no doubt like staples for an awesome program. And one of the things that I've seen a lot with your tweets and stuff is just breaking it down, the why for your athletes so much of like why you're doing certain movements. And this is when they put it in. And this is why we're doing it with our tennis team or whatever. How much buy-in are you getting from student athletes when they know, like what they're doing carries over directly to their sport?
It's pretty good. And I think, again, it can depend on the athlete, especially with my kids who play year-round. It may not even be the lifting that, gets me the buy-in. It's the other things that we're doing, like, focusing on specific mobility or flexibility, having sessions where we're trying to get to feel better because they're broken down. And so, sitting down, and one of the first things I did here when I was hired was with my volleyball team, because they were in preseason. We sat down on the floor in the gym and got some bands, and they didn't know me, I didn't know them, and we just sat and stretched and talked, and spending that time and getting that buy-in, but also leading them through things that they could feel, and then when we were done, they felt better. So sometimes it doesn't come from, I squatted this much weight, now I'm jumping this high. Sometimes it's just spending time with them, listening to what's going on, trying to address everything that I can to help them feel and play as best as they can.
Yeah, that's such a big deal, right? Like, we're not just strength coaches. It's not just strength and conditioning. It's athletic performance so many times.
Right.
And that's where kids want, like they don't want to just go into the weight room and get their butt kicked every day. Like there's
right.
And for a strength coach, we don't want to do that every day either. Like that's not the purpose of what we're there for. So I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Just saying, like there is so much more to what we're doing. And obviously when you're doing that, like people buy into that, they see it and they want to be a part of that. And I think that's awesome, Coach, that you're doing that stuff and your teams appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, even as a strength coaches, we like to train and we like to, but we don't do that to ourselves. If we're smart about it, we don't grind ourselves down. We don't, we take a deload here, there, or if we're not feeling it that day, we don't push. and I certainly can't expect that from my kids, especially when they're my volleyball kids are playing 48 weeks out of the year. They're beat up sometimes, so we do other things to help performance besides just lift weights or run or whatever. Yeah.
Right. So there's the interesting thing that I'll see every once in a while within the strength and conditioning world, where people will talk about, like the old school mentality is to grind, get up and grind, rise and grind, all these different things
Right.
that where it's all about the grind. And then we have this other side of the story where everybody's like, no, you should never grind, like that grind is not the word or whatever. And I totally get where both of them are coming from. There's just got to be a time to work and a time to recover. Right. And to have the mentality to say, this is what's best for me, or this is what's best for our team, or whatever it is. I think that's where, we talk about like the art or science of coaching. I mean, that's where people can really get the buy-in and to do those things. It's always humorous to me anyway, that where people are just like so hard one way or another, when it's so many times that's really not the answer. Because, we're going to get kids that are soft by that point if they can never, rise up against adversity or be able to grind a little bit. I'm speaking from like a father's point of view. Like when we had Jace to right now, there's a lot of times where, like you have to get up with your child or be the best that you can be once you get home. Like how many times are our student athletes going to need that throughout their life where they have to grind a little bit? And so I think that that's I guess a little bit too long of a spiel, but I wanted to hear a little bit of your thoughts on that. What do you think, Coach?
Yeah, I agree. It's like you said, you have to know when to work, and then when to take your foot off the gas sometimes, and it can depend on for me it can depend on the team that I'm with that day. It can and each part of strength and conditioning, you've got college, high school, pro, private, and everyone's situation is very different, and they don't all look the same, and so it's what you see on social media, or it's very you can't judge based on that look from the outside, because it's different, and I agree that you can't grind all the time, or you just have to be smart with when you're working, and trying to reap what you sow from that work, and also try to stay healthy. That's part of the picture as well.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Coach, like you've talked about, you've got Michael Boyle is a big influencer, and you talk about how you're a perfectionist, and you also give your student athletes a why behind a lot of their stuff. That means you've got to be studying up yourself. That means you've got to be in the books and getting your hands on as much as you can as far as information. What are some of your favorite professional development resources that are your go-tos?
Well, I've been reading and referencing T Nation for years. I find a host of information, just a plethora of stuff on that website. There's some very smart coaches who have been in the trenches for a long time, regardless of their background, whether it be bodybuilding or strength conditioning or powerlifting. I reference T Nation a lot. When I want to learn about something, I'll go to that website and type in to see if there's any articles on it and who they're by. So I read that a lot. I do like a textbook from time to time, although it's not as convenient to sit down and open a book. Sometimes we have our phones with us all the time. It's easier to find information to read. I actually learn a lot from social media, whether it's a video or a thread. I like Twitter because it allows for an open exchange of ideas and dialogue. So when a thread gets going, it's really interesting to me. I like to read them because people are submitting their rationales or asking questions, and it opens my mind about how other people are thinking about training, and even disagreements. You can try to kind of see. Sometimes you can see multiple points in a disagreement, and it goes to show that there's not one way, and we don't have it all figured out, and so I like Twitter for that reason. Instagram is also great. I'm a visual learner, so I get a lot of ideas mobility drills and ways to build new movements into progressions. I do like going to clinics and conferences. I think it's good to get out of your bubble a little bit and, be around people in the industry who are leading with these new ideas and research on things. So I would say those are probably my top ways to continue my education and keep learning.
Yeah, Coach, those are all great resources. I kind of relate to the T Nation one. That was my college strength coach. That's what we started out reading a ton of stuff from there as we were interns and just learning more and more about the field. And he just would continually just direct us towards T Nation. I remember like some of the early Eric Cressy ones, or he was a huge fan of Mark Ripito, and so it was always fun to read through those. What are some of the things that you do on a daily basis then, just to stay on top of this? You talked about social media. Is that one of your favorite go-tos then daily?
Yeah, I'm probably on T Nation weekly. Just trying to read an article or two here and there. And honestly, as I'm working and thinking about programming and what I need to do, a lot of times I'll try to brush up on reading about things, and sometimes it'll take me down a spiral of one page leads to another, and so I end up learning a lot in the process that way. And like I said, our phones are always on us, so when if I open a social media, Twitter especially, I can see that there's an exchange of thoughts about something going on. I'll scroll through it and read it. And for me, I process and think a lot, so I don't have to come across something brand new. I can take some sort of conversation or some sort of comment and totally just kind of expand on that in my mind and think about that way. So to me, that's a really good way for me to learn personally.
That's great stuff, Coach. So just being able to talk to you and learn a little bit more about your situation and where you're coming from and what you're doing at Denton. Can you kind of just give us the synopsis or what you would say, how you're making the big time where you're at? Because right now there is no doubt in my mind that you're making the big time where you're at. I just want to hear it in your words.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot. I think we're doing a really good job of kind of trying to pioneer, trying to lead the way in training kids who play year-round. That's kind of been, like I said, one of my biggest challenges, and that's our challenges and our mountains that we have to climb. That's how we learn, and so that's just something that I've tried to wholeheartedly tackle. But I think that we're doing it successfully. We're keeping kids healthy, and my coaching staff's buy in, and they supply me with equipment if I need it. They give me the time that I need with them. They're understanding. We try to get together, and we try to educate one another on what's going on and communicate about what's going on. There has to be there's a lot of moving parts, for any program to be successful, and I think we make that work here. We have, calendars of when the girls are playing and who's playing and how many games they're playing, and without having hard data on how many times they're jumping and all those kinds of things, we're doing the best we can to treat their bodies as best as we can and to help them stay healthy, really. Kind of get off on a tangent. I'm all for long-term athletic development, the whole LTAD movement, but as I've been as I've witnessed and observed and trained these kids, we're really needing to get to a point where we're looking at a long-term health perspective for these athletes. So that's another thing that I try to keep in mind. And I think when I'm programming or when I'm running a workout is what am I putting in this bucket that's already full, and how could that affect them when they're 35? So I think that we're doing a good job as far as that front goes. Yeah.
Yeah, all those are great, Coach. I think it's awesome when you're an extension of the staff. Each one of the sports that you're with, that's really fun to be a part of the team that way. And the other thing that you're talking about there at the end, the lifetime wellness and just making sure that we're not filling a bucket to overflowing. I totally think that there's so much value in that, because like we want people to do this for some form of at least activity or exercise or working out the rest of their life, because there's a reason why we do it. We find so much value in it now. Like hopefully
Right.
they can continue that on. So I like everything that you said there, Coach. Those are awesome points.
Appreciate it.
We're moving toward the end of the show here, and we normally finish up with some, we just call them finisher questions, and there's quick questions, and you can throw out the answers as we go, and at the end you'll have the opportunity also to just get your contact information out there, and if people want to reach out to you, learn a little bit more from you, or connect in any way, it's just a really fun way to keep the conversation going. So at the end you can get that information out there too.
Okay.
Awesome. Coach, to start out the finisher questions, what's your favorite book?
Well, I've been thinking about that since you asked, and I'm going to go with the one I'm currently reading or trying to finish. I'm sure the next book I read, I'll say it's my favorite as well. But right now I'm reading Benjamin Franklin's Autobiography, and it's different to read. It's hard to read because he's speaking, writing, and a form of English that's a little bit dated. But his insight on the world, even centuries ago, is relevant now, and his ideas on trying to be the best person that you can be and trying to be the best at what you do really have impacted me my whole life. And so I decided, well, I should read his autobiography. And anyway, it's I recommend it. It's a lot of insightful things that can be taken and be relevant today.
That's really cool and kind of intriguing. I want to at least check that out a little bit. That's cool. How about?
Yeah, I recommend it. Yeah.
Okay, well, how about a person that has influenced you the most? And that could be strength and conditioning or anything within this field, or that could be within your life.
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer, and it's good that it's hard. I guess I've been really blessed with a lot of people in my life that have influenced me in a positive way. I would say, however, my sister is the winner of that. I'm very thankful my parents gave me a sibling, and she's younger than me, but in many ways has kind of led me, and she's my best friend, and so I definitely, she's able to, call me out. I don't know if you have siblings, but siblings know how to push your buttons, and they know how to get the best of you and the worst of you sometimes. But I would definitely say she's that person for me. She's been that rock, and strength and conditioning is not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of work and a lot of unpaid hours and moving around the country, and she's always been a supporter of me, and so yeah.
That's awesome. It's always great to have that person in your corner, whoever that is.
Yeah.
And that's great you have that. So how about your favorite quote, Coach?
I have a list of those. And this quote can be, I guess, taken a lot of different ways. It's Mark Twain. He has a famous quote, and it's probably got a few variations. But basically, he said he's never let his schooling interfere with his education. And I kind of take that. I've always liked that quote because and this is really applicable to strength coaches. You have to have science. You have to have the textbooks. You have to have a firm basis and a firm foundation for everything you do. But as we well know, it doesn't always look that way. It doesn't always come out like a textbook situation. You learn a lot just being in the trenches and in life too. You learn a lot of things not from school, just learning about life. And so I would say that's probably one of my favorite quotes.
Mark Twain quotes in general are awesome. I think that's one of my favorites there too. That's pretty cool.
Agreed.
What about a small school coach who's killing it and deserves a shout out?
Okay, so that college or high school, can it be either?
Yeah, it can be either. Yes.
Okay. Well, and he has a huge following, a social media following. He's a huge influencer. But Craig Edwards at University of New Hampshire, I believe, and I don't know if that's really considered a small school, if it's a D1 or not. I know it's not like a big time huge school in my mind. It's not a USD or something, but
we'll take it. I'll take that.
Okay. Yeah. He's been a big influence on me. I've followed him on social media a long time, and I really appreciate the in-depth information he gives out on why he trains and how he does it, and so yeah.
Honestly, like I see his stuff pop up all the time. It's probably because I click on it, just because I want to hear what he says, and also the people that he gets to respond to him, because he's got a particular point of view, right? And so does it's similar to like a Michael Boyle type of point of view, and I enjoy that so much, because him and Mike Boyle, they have that way of just saying, you know what, this makes sense. This is the way that we run things, and then they put it out on social media and let people kind of run with it. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I like it, but
definitely.
So much of it applies. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. Go for it.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I agree. I know that Craig was at. I think he was worked at Mike's for a while. I don't know for sure. I know his influence is very strong in that philosophy, and I really appreciate that. Like, this works for us, and we've got healthy kids, and so.
Yeah, no kidding. If it works for you. It's like so many people try to come on and say some other way, but it's like, well, this is what we're doing right now, and this is the results that we're getting. So,
right. Why would you change it?
Yeah, it's tough to argue with that.
Yeah.
Coach, how about like you've got through the whole show, gave us some awesome information, but sometimes people just want to reach out. They want to learn more. They just want to continue the conversation even more. What do you got for best ways to reach out to you?
Sure. My Twitter handle is Rachel, Rachel, KH, and then the number 2. That's Twitter. I have an Instagram page that I posted the school stuff on. It is the word and then underscore H123 underscore. And so I'll post, stories about whatever the kids are doing. Sometimes I'll make a post about, with an explanation. But honestly, most of our stuff probably goes on Twitter. So, yeah.
Great. I first saw your stuff on Twitter, and I think it's very cool just to see other strength coaches that, I don't know, they're just passionate about helping their athletes. It always pumps me up. So thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to talk to me and then put this podcast out so other people can hear what you got going on down in Texas.
Well, thanks, Preston. I'm honored that you asked me on, and appreciate your time, and hopefully it might help somebody learn something. I don't know, but thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm sure it will. Coach, thanks again. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too. Take care.